So, when I was 4 or 5, I spent a good chunk of my time at Aunt Becky's house. She wasn't really my aunt, but she looked after me, and it seemed most of the neighborhood kids when we weren't in school and our parents were at work. And one day, when most of the older kids were away at school, I got a little bored. Wandering around the house aimlessly, I soon found myself in the dining room, where I discovered a pair of craft scissors on the table. And the dog. Yeah, you see where this is going. Fast forward about 15 minutes, and I am standing in front of Aunt Becky, scissors behind my back. Dog looking a lot lighter, and pretty cool in an early 80s punk sort of way, I thought. Aunt Becky was not so sure. "What happened to Rags?" Aunt Becky asked. "Rags seems to be shedding his fur," I said. In a way that I figured to be nonchalantly. Again, Aunt Becky not completely convinced. And this is, of course, because I am a terrible liar. And as I got older, I continued to be a terrible liar. The nature of the lies changed, though, in middle and high school. They were more about who I was than anything I'd done. Rather than explain that we didn't have the money for a specific outing, I'd just beg off by mumbling that I already had plans. Rather than say I felt uncomfortable expressing the kind of femininity that involves makeup, I'd say it was a waste of money or that it made me break out. And maybe these fibs were believed, or maybe people sensing my reluctance just backed off. Nonetheless, I was still a terrible liar. Saying these things caused my stomach to drop and my heart to race and my voice to falter. And they made me feel like somehow I was cheating. I wasn't being true to myself, and I wasn't being true to my friends either. And yet, I felt compelled to lie because I felt that something about me was wrong. Something that I was wrong. My gender expression, my social class, even the way I expressed my race, they just didn't fit. Have you ever felt like that? Felt that you had to pretend to be something or someone you weren't in order to fit in? Now, these were some of my early forays into the idea of integrity. And integrity is used a lot of different ways in the English language. So in the interest of integrity, I'll cop to heading to the dictionary for this one to see what it had to say. Number 1, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. And 2, the state of being whole and undivided. Those are pretty good guidelines. And when we're talking about integrity, we're talking about both of those, doing the right thing and keeping ourselves spiritually whole. Not splitting what's at the core of us. Those values that are most sacred and most basic to who we are. Much has been written in recent years about moral injury. This has been the subject of much study among psychologists as well as other mental and spiritual caregivers, such as chaplains, and especially as it pertains to acts of war. Moral injury is the damage done to one's conscience or moral compass when that person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent acts that transgress their own moral beliefs, values, or ethical codes of conduct. So it makes sense that this study originated with veterans, since the acts that soldiers are expected to perform are sometimes violent and often dehumanizing of the enemy, acts that are antithetical to the values of inherent respect for human life and dignity that many of us have been raised with. What studies are finding is that moral injury can act much like PTSD. The folks at the Moral Injury Project at Syracuse University say moral injury can lead to serious distress, depression, and suicidality. Moral injury can take the life of those suffering from it, both metaphorically and literally. Moral injury debilitates people, preventing them from living full and healthy lives. You know what that means, friends? That means that we are so wired for integrity as humans, for living into our values in a way that keeps them and that keeps us whole, that not to do so can result in severe consequences to our mental and physical health. And so, of course, we do our best to avoid moral injury. Now, in the extreme cases, moral injury, as we've heard, shows up in PTSD-like symptoms. But I believe it can show up in other subtler ways too. How many times have we heard, it won't work? People won't come because they don't care. Tone it down or people won't listen. Yes, but that's not the world we live in. How many times have we said something like that to someone else? Why do we do that? Why do we police our own attempts at living out our values? Why do we stop ourselves from living out who we are in the world more effectively than any politician, police force, or public condemnation ever could? It's an attempt to protect ourselves, folks. Our aversion to moral injury is so strong sometimes that we don't even want to risk putting our values out into the world. Because failure hurts. Assaults on our values hurt. Being forced day after day to participate in systems that hurt people hurts. And often daring to hope that we can change the disaster that is currently our country hurts. Writer and activist Austin Channing Brown says, "Hope for progress is a dangerous thing. But what is the alternative? What would you have rather done with your time and energy? Speaking up was a good use of your time. Working for change was a good use of your energy. Trying to change the world was the right choice. Would you rather have chosen apathy? Would you rather have chosen silence? Would you rather have swallowed yourself whole? Surely not. Because hope is a duty. And your hope is only tangentially related to the fate of the White House. What is always at stake is the deep belief in your own humanity, in your personhood. What is at stake is dignity, and your dignity is always the right thing to fight for. You must hope because you are worthy. You are worthy of your humanity being honored. You are worthy of equality and equal protection. You are worthy of everything you fought for. Hope is a duty, even when it hurts. Be angry, but not at yourself for wanting better. Hope is a duty. Oof. But she's right, you know. And the people over at the Moral Injury Project concur. They go on to say the effects of moral injury go beyond the individual and can destroy one's capacity to trust others, impinging on the family system and the larger community. Moral injury must be brought forward into the community for a shared process of healing. And this, too, friends, is why we come to church. So that we can bring our shared values that are often so at odds with what we experience in life outside of these walls. We can bring them and we can have them affirmed and lifted up. We can practice them in community, have them affirmed, lift them up, shore them up. Brene Brown, you knew she was going to be in here somewhere. Brene Brown says, "So what is integrity? She says, I came up with this definition because I didn't like any of the ones out there. And that's what I do when I don't like them. I look in the data and I say, what's integrity? Here's what I think integrity is. 3 pieces. It's choosing courage over comfort, choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy, and practicing your values, not just professing your values. So this, friends, is the work of church, to help us decide what's right, what is courageous rather than comfortable, to listen to the still small voice that tells us when we're not treating ourselves or others with kindness, compassion, respect, with equity, or any of our core values here at JUC. And we do this by practicing and living out our values together here in so many ways, by affirming the lives and loves of everyone within our walls, by doing equity and justice work in the wider community among people whose lives aren't valued by our culture, by finding new ways to care for one another and to love one another in community. And soon, we're going to be choosing a new name for our congregation, a name that affirms who we are as a community, who we intend to be in the world. As we continue in that process, and as we consider who we are and what it means to be a community of integrity, my sincerest hope is that we do so in ways that affirm and promote the wholeness of each and every one of our members. As we heard from Melandria Williams earlier, we are worthy not because of what we produce, but because of who we are. We are divine bodies of light and darkness. You are not worthy because of what you offer, not because of what is in your mind, nor the support you give others, not for what you give at all. We are worthy and are whole just because in this great turning, in this radical readjustment and alignment, we are not disposable, we are needed. We are the very people that have withstood everything that has been thrown at us as a people. So friends, may we go forth in integrity and in hope, affirming the wholeness of each and every one of us, affirming the power of the faith, hope, love, and joy at our center. Thank you.